everyone, I am Roshni from Learner Hub, the free learning platform, and today I am here with the fourth and the final video on Heredity and Evolution Class 10 Science. So in this video, we are going to learn about sex determination and the principles of inheritance. Now trust me, these are again very important concepts, and they are also going to help you when you go to your next class, that is in 11th and 12th. You are again going to learn about these topics in much more detail. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. So the principles of inheritance, wherein we will talk about the principle of dominance, principle of segregation, and principle of independent assortment. So in the previous slide, I already told you based on which observation Mendel arrived at each of these principles. So let us quickly talk about each of them in detail. So let us first talk about the principle of dominance. It says that in heterozygous organisms, only one out of the two alleles expresses itself, which is the dominant trait, while the other remains hidden, that is the recessive trait. So if we talk about the Mendel's experiment, we see for a heterozygous organism like this tall plant, capital T, small t. So capital T is a dominant trait, small t is a recessive trait. Right? So what did Mendel do? He crossed a tall plant with a dwarf plant. So he took a tall plant and a dwarf plant. When he crossed them, he found that all the plants that were obtained were tall. That's because each of them had one dominant allele present in each of them. Right? So only the dominant traits get expressed in the F1 generation. However, that doesn't mean that the other trait gets lost. The other trait also remains in that organism, but in a hidden form, and that trait is known as the recessive trait. So this was the principle of dominance. Next was the principle of segregation. It says that each allele retains its identity even though they remain together in an individual. They segregate only during gamete formation. That means when we talk about a heterozygous tall plant, for example, capital T, small t. Now, they always remain together and they together make the plant tall. That's because capital T is a dominant trait. But that doesn't mean that this small t, the hidden trait, will lose its identity. It will still retain its identity. And when will they separate out? They separate out during gamete formation. When you cross-pollinate it, so each of them will separate out. That is how we do it, right? So, what is seen? Let us suppose, so it was seen that when the F1 generation plant, so this was the F1 generation plant, that is capital T, small t, self-pollinated. So, what was the result? The result was one homozygous tall, two heterozygous tall, and one dwarf plant. So, when did these alleles separate out? During gamete formation. Capital T, small t, capital T, small t, and then these can combine in one of these ways. Right? And that is how these four plants were formed. So each of these alleles retains its identity even though they remain together in an individual. That is the principle of segregation. The word segregate also means to separate out. So the alleles separate out only during gamete formation, retaining its identity. So let us now look at the principle of independent assortment. This says that during gamete formation, segregation of alleles of one pair is independent of the segregation of alleles of the other pair. So for this, let us take the example of the dihybrid cross. So in the dihybrid cross, what did Mendel do? He self-pollinated the hybrid plants with round and yellow seeds. So what were these hybrid plants with round and yellow seeds? This was nothing but the F1 generation. Right? In the second experiment, we saw that he cross-pollinated round and yellow seeds with green and wrinkle seeds. So what was his first generation? The dominant traits, that is round and yellow seeds. Right? Now he self-pollinated the round and yellow seeds. So what did he get? So these round and yellow seeds, when self-pollinated, this was the result. So he got 9 round and yellow seeds, 3 round and green seeds, 3 wrinkled and yellow seeds, and 1 wrinkled and green seeds. So this was the result. Correct? So this shows that it is not necessary that round and yellow always have to be together. Right? So round is the shape of the seed, yellow is the color of the seed, and they are independent of each other. Round can also exist with green color, round can also exist with yellow color. Similarly, wrinkled can exist with green color as well as it can exist with yellow color. So each pair is independent of the other pair. Right? So when I talk about the segregation of alleles of one pair, so one pair is this, the second pair is this. So segregation of allele of this pair is independent of the segregation of allele of this pair. That means this will segregate in its own way, this will segregate in its own way, and then they will combine with the other alleles also in its own way. That is why all possible combinations are possible here. Right, so these were the 3 important principles of inheritance given by the father of genetics, Gregor Mendel. Now that we have got an idea about how the traits get passed on from one generation to another. Now the question is, how do these traits get expressed? I mean, what actually happens inside the body of living organism? Here I just showed you by calculative method that what will happen if this kind of organism is bred with this kind of organism. So what will be the type of offspring? Now the question is how they actually get expressed in an organism. So basically genes control the traits of living organisms. Right? So what are genes? Where are they located? As I said, in any living organism, be it plant or animal, the entire body is made up of cells. In case this is the animal cell, here it is the plant cell. Inside the cell, we have the nucleus, and in the nucleus, we have these red colored structures, thread-like structures called chromosomes. If we look at each chromosome in detail, we can see these kind of regions which are known as genes, and genes are nothing but made up of DNA. So a specific section of DNA which code for a particular protein, that is known as a gene. Right? So these genes actually control the traits of living organisms. These genes actually tell us how the living organism is going to be. Right? So each portion of this DNA, let us suppose this portion of DNA, it codes for a specific protein. Say it codes for a structural protein. Right? So this is the gene for the structure of that organism. Similarly, maybe the remaining portion, it codes for some other types of proteins. Right? So again, that part of the gene is responsible for those kind of traits. So as the information in the DNA or as the coding in the DNA changes, different types of proteins are synthesized. Now as the type of proteins which are synthesized varies, the design of the organism also varies. Right? So now let us take an example. So let us take an example from Mendel's experiment itself. Right? So in Mendel's first set of experiment, we saw that the character which he chose for his experiment was the height of the plant. Right? So he took one tall plant and another dwarf plant. Right? Now, if you look at it, if you look at the structure of a plant, on what factors does the height of the plant depends? Now, in one of our previous lessons when we were talking about control and coordination, right, we saw that height of a plant depends on the growth hormones present in the plant. Now, an example of a plant hormone is auxin. Right? So, if the amount of hormone is more, the height of the plant is also more. So, it is like plant height. If I talk about, so this plant height depends upon the plant hormones like auxin. So if there are more auxins present in the plant, what will happen? The plant will be, the height will be more. So height will be more and the plant will be tall. Now if the amount of auxin present in the plant is very less, in that case the height will be less and this will result in a dwarf plant. Right? Now who is responsible for the secretion of the hormones? Who is responsible for this? Now, these hormones in turn, like in human beings, the hormones are excreted or secreted by the glands, right? But in case of plants, there are enzymes which are responsible for the secretion of the hormones, and these enzymes in turn are nothing but proteins, right? So where and who is responsible for the synthesis of proteins? So these hormones are controlled by the proteins, and who synthesizes proteins? Genes, right? So gene has the information for synthesis of proteins. Now if the gene has alteration, there is some alteration in the gene, that means there will be some alteration in the synthesis of proteins. So if the proteins synthesized are less, then the auxins produced will also be less, therefore the plant will be dwarf, right? So now you see that how genes control the different traits present in an organism. So this was just an example. So similarly, all other traits which we see in different organisms, be it eye color, hair color, skin color, body appearance, so everything in turn is controlled by something inside the body, and which in turn depends on the synthesis of proteins. And protein synthesis is wholly and solely controlled by the genes. Therefore, we say that genes control the different traits in an organism, right? As we know that both parents contribute equally to the DNA of the offspring during the sexual reproduction through the germ cells, through the sex cells. So each sex cells is haploid, as I have discussed before also, because they contain half the amount of genetic material from each parent. And then these two sex cells combine, and therefore the genetic material from the two parents also combine. And that is how the transfer of characters take place from one generation to the other generation with the help of genes. So this is how the different characters are actually expressed in an organism. Let us now talk about the last topic of this section, heredity, that is sex determination. As I told before also that sex chromosomes are the one which are responsible for determining sex of an organism, whether it is going to be a male or a female. Now females always have a perfect pair of sex chromosome which is denoted by XX. What do we mean by perfect pair? That means both the chromosomes are exactly equal in size and shape. That is why they are called a perfect pair of chromosome, and they are denoted by XX. On the other hand, when I talk of males, they have mismatched pair of chromosomes. That is the Y, that is why they are denoted by XY. The Y chromosome is slightly shorter than the X chromosome. So this is how it looks like in case of a male, right? Now what happens during sexual reproduction? As I mentioned before also, if this is the male and this is the female, during sexual reproduction, what will happen? The female will contribute 22 autosomes and 1 sex chromosome. Similarly, the male will contribute 22 autosomes and 1 sex chromosome. So here we will not talk about the autosomes because sex chromosomes are the one which are responsible for determining sex. So let us only talk about the sex chromosomes. So now, the reproduction takes place with the help of the male and female germ cells, that is the sex cells. So here you can see that this sperm, the male sperm can carry an X, it can contribute an X as well as it can contribute a Y, because for males the sex chromosomes are XY, for female it is XX. So the female will always contribute a X, therefore the egg cell always has an X. But the male can contribute either X or Y. So there is a possibility that the sperm will carry an X or the sperm will carry a Y. Now what will happen if the sperm carries a X? So this X and X will combine and it will form XX. And what is XX? XX is a female. So a female child will be born. But if the sperm carries a Y chromosome, in that case the Y will combine with X and it will form XY. And what is XY? It is a male. So the child born is going to be a male. So that is how we can say that it is always the father who decides the sex of the child, whether it is going to be a boy or a girl. So now that we have seen that Gregor Mendel gave so much of contribution for in the field of genetics. He was the first one to give the principles of inheritance, based on which so many other advanced things came up. The entire subject of genetics came only after Gregor Mendel. Now, a very small question. Why did Mendel choose pea plant for his experiments? When there are plenty of plants, plenty of organisms, why did he choose pea plant itself? Because there are certain properties which are there in pea plant which makes it very special for these kind of experiments. The first was that pea plant has several contrasting characters like height, flower color, seed color and shape. Like, in order to perform these kind of cross pollination or self pollination, Mendel needed different characters. The plant should have different properties, so that he can check that which characters are getting transmitted to which offspring, right? So this pea plant has flowers of different colors. Violet color flowers are also there, white color flowers are also there. It also has seeds which are of different shapes. Some seeds are round, some are wrinkled, some seeds are green in color, some are yellow in color, some plants are tall, some are dwarf. So there were a variety of contrasting characters available with the pea plant. So he can do a lot of experimentation with different contrasting characters. It has a short lifespan. That was very much advantageous, because if the lifespan is short, Mendel can perform a lot of experiments, right? Because what he was trying to do was, he was cross-pollinating plants, producing new generation. So now if the plant has a short lifespan, so the new generation produced will grow fast. Now as soon as they grow, he can again cross-pollinate them or self-pollinate them, and again the next generation will come up. Since they have a short lifespan, so the plants will also, they live their entire lifespan. So he can perform a lot of experiments. He can perform a longer chain of experiment. But in case it would have a long lifespan, in that case, if he have cross-pollinated a set of plants, the next set of plants will take a long time to live its own life. So after that, when he thinks of self-pollinating that plant, it will be too late, right? So he could not have been able to perform a series of experiments with a plant which had a bigger lifespan. So having a short lifespan was advantageous for Mendel in performing his experiments. Convenient to handle, they are not very big or they are not very heavy, so that you will have some difficulty in handling. So they are very easy to handle. Self-pollinated plant in nature. So how do they naturally fertilize? By self-pollination. So self-pollination is the natural method, but they can also be cross-pollinated easily. How? By artificial methods. That means, what is cross-pollination? It is nothing but taking the pollen grains from the flower of one plant and then putting it on the stigma of the other plant. So that cross-pollination method is also very easy. So we can see that in a pea plant, he had many contrasting characters to play with in the experiments. A short lifespan. Self-pollination was possible naturally, cross-pollination was possible artificially, and that too it was very easy. So both self-pollination and cross-pollination was also possible with the pea plant. So because of all these advantages with the pea plant, Mendel chose this for his experiments. So with this, I'll end my discussion on the topic heredity. Now, before we go ahead with the next topic on evolution, let us look at some of the questions, just to ensure that you have understood the concepts well. The first one, a Mendelian experiment consisted of breeding tall pea plants bearing violet flowers with short pea plants bearing white flowers. Okay, so here you have two contrasting characters. One is the height of the plant, and the other one is the color of the flower, right? So what are the two contrasting characters here? Plant height and flower color, right? The progeny all bore violet flowers, but almost half of them were short. So what was the generation which was produced? The output was that all of them had violet flowers. Okay, but half of them were short and the remaining half were tall. So this suggests that the genetic makeup of the tall parent can be depicted as which of these? So let us see. So here it says, when we talk about the progeny, it was all violet, right? So if the progeny was all violet, that means that the parent was homozygous violet. So here, which are the letters which we will use to denote them? We have white and violet. So here if you see capital W, small w. Let us suppose that small w denotes white and capital W denotes violet. Okay, so small w is for, so let me write here, for white we denote small w, for violet we denote capital W. Now you might ask, why are we denoting white with small w? Why not with capital W? Because here it says that the progeny bore all violet flowers. That means violet is the dominant trait, right? So we generally prefer to denote the dominant trait with a capital letter. So that is why we are denoting violet with a capital W and white with a small w. Similarly, we will denote tall plants with capital T and dwarf plants with a small t, right? So this will be our notations. Now if the progeny has all violet flowers, that means the parent is definitely having homozygous violet. So the parent will have WW. Because if the parent would have been heterozygous, because in our previous topics which we have discussed, we saw that whenever the parent is homozygous tall, all the progeny is going to be tall. But if the parent is heterozygous tall, in that case the progeny will have a mixture of tall and short plants, right? So similar is the case here. Here the progeny is all violet, that means the parent is homozygous violet, right? So this was about the flower. Now let us talk about the height. So in the height it says that the progeny is a mixture of tall and short. Half of them are tall and half of them are short. So the similar logic applies here. So if the progeny is a mixture of tall and short, that means the parent is heterozygous, right? So the parent has to be heterozygous. So how the parent will look like? So the parent will be capital T, small t, capital W, capital W. So this is going to be the right answer. Clear? So you understand the logic? We have discussed all these things. So whenever the parent is a homozygous, all the next generation are going to be of the same dominant trait. So here, since the F1 generation is all violet, this shows that violet is the dominant trait out of the two flower colors, and it also says that the parent is homozygous violet, that is WW. But in for the height character, the progeny is a combination of tall and short. Some are tall, some are short. So the parent has to be a heterozygous, and that is why this is going to be the genetic makeup of the tall parent, right? So what is going to be the genetic makeup of the short parent? So this will cross with the short parent, that is TTWW. Because if any of, now short parent is obviously this, right? Because the short parent is the recessive trait. So it has to have everything recessive. Even if one of them is capital T or capital W, so it will not be a short plant bearing white flowers, because the short trait is also recessive, the white trait is also recessive. So it will be this. Clear? Okay. So let us look at the next question. A study found that children with light colored eyes are likely to have parents with light colored eyes. Okay. On this basis, can we say anything about whether the light color is a dominant trait or a recessive trait? Why or why not? Okay. So first of all, when I say light colored eye, so how can a light colored eye be denoted? Whether we will denote it as capital L, considering that the light colored eye is dominant, or we will write it as small l, considering it is recessive, or we can write it as capital L, small l, considering it as a hybrid. Right? But in this case, we do not know whether this trait is dominant or recessive. So that is the question. Can we say if the trait is dominant or recessive? What is given? That a children with light colored eye are likely to have parents with light colored eyes. Right? That means if the child is capital L, in that case, the parent will also be capital L, right? Because if the child is homozygous, so the parent has to be homozygous. Now, if the child is small l, so in that case, what will happen? The parent should also be small l, because it has got small l from both the parents, right? So the parent should also be a small l and small l. So now in this case, so we cannot say whether the eye color is dominant or recessive, because this information is not enough, because there is a possibility that the trait is recessive, but since both the parents have light colored eye, the child will also have a light colored eye, right? Now if we say that the trait is dominant, even if one of the parents have light colored eye, the child can also have light colored eye. So in both the cases, we see that there is a possibility that the child will have light colored eye if any of the parents have light colored eye. So we cannot say that whether the light colored eye is a dominant trait or a recessive trait. Let's look at another one. Outline a project which aims to find the dominant coat color in dogs. Now, when we talk about dogs, there are a variety of coat colors which are actually available. It can be black, it can be brown, it can be white, so it can be grey. There are plenty of colors available. So, just for now, let us take an example. Let us consider that we have a homogeneous black dog and we have a homogeneous, say, white dog. So let us suppose if I have a black dog and I have a white dog. Let us say if I have a homogeneous black dog and I have a homozygous black dog and a homozygous white dog. Now if both of them are bred together, if they mate with each other, so what will happen? What will happen to the F1 generation? So in the F1 generation, so if both of them mate with each other, so what will be the F1 generation? F1 generation will have BB, BB, BB and BB. That is, all of them are hybrid, but they are all black, right? So we can say that black is the dominant coat color in dogs, right? So if we want to find out the dominant coat color, what we can do, we can take a homozygous homozygous dog of one color, another homozygous dog of another color. We mate them. So the generation which we get, whichever color is displayed, that is the dominant coat color in dogs. Right? So here black and white are just examples. You can take any color you want, and in that fashion, you can actually find out which is the dominant color, because the dominant color will express itself in the F1 generation. Let us look at another one. How is the equal genetic contribution of male and female parents ensured in the progeny? So how do we know that the male and the female both contribute equally in the offspring? Now, as I said before also, that a human male will have a total of 46 chromosomes. So they will have 44 autosomes and 2 sex chromosomes. Similarly, the female will also have 44 autosomes and 2 sex chromosomes. So what is the sex chromosome in male? It will be XY. For female, the sex chromosomes is XX. Now, what happens during reproduction? Now, during reproduction, the male will send out the sperm cell and the female will give the egg cell. This sperm cell will contain 22 autosomes and 1 sex chromosome, either X or Y. The egg will contain 22 autosomes and 1 sex chromosome, and this sex chromosome will always be X because it has only X. So now these two will combine together to form the zygote. The sperm and the egg will combine together. So there are two possibilities. In one possibility, X will combine with X. In other possibility, Y will combine with X. So in the first possibility, what will happen? 22 autosomes will also combine with 22 autosomes. So it will form 44 autosomes plus 44 autosomes and 2 sex chromosomes, that is XX. That is one scenario. In the second scenario, these 22 and 22 will combine, so it will form 44 autosomes, plus this Y and X will combine, that is XY, that is 2 sex chromosomes, that is total 46 chromosomes. So this will give rise to a male child, this will give rise to a female child. So that is how we can say that the equal genetic contribution, because the total number of chromosomes was 46 in any human being. So here also the total number of chromosomes is 46. Here also the total number of chromosomes is 46, and it is contributed equally by both the parents, 23 from father and 23 from mother.
I hope this video was useful. If you have a feedback to share, do let us know in the comment section. And if you really enjoyed the video, do not forget to share it with your friends as well. I will meet you all very soon with a new video, with a new topic. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.